They thought she was just another quiet officer, too calm, too composed, too easy to laugh at. So one night in a bar that should have closed earlier, they flicked her forehead, mocked her scars. Then one of them swung. What they didn't know is that she wasn't quiet because she couldn't fight. She was quiet because she didn't need to. Now, before we show you how a single pivot turned 3 Marines into a lesson and the sentence that ended their careers, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on and stay right here. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's a warning. The neon above Slater's lounge flickered like it had 20 minutes left to live. Friday night at Camp Hollister meant the off-base crowd wasn't leaving quietly. Not after inspection got canceled and 2 airlifts came back early. Inside smelled like stale beer and salt wind from the coast. Jukebox was off. A few enlisted played pool without talking, keeping their heads down, eyes away from the wrong tables. Lieutenant Commander Isla Kerr sat alone in the corner booth, dog-eared paperback open under a bulb that barely worked. She wasn't dressed for attention. Faded base fleece, black tank underneath, hair tied back without ceremony. The soda in front of her had gone flat an hour ago. She was still on page 47. No one at Slater's really knew her. Some knew rumors. Salvage diver, deep ops, once surfaced with a pilot's body and a tack bag strapped to her chest. But mostly they just knew she didn't talk unless you asked something worth answering. Behind the bar, Gus wiped the same glass for the 3rd time. He heard them before the door even opened. 4 Marines, corporals, still wearing half their duty camis, Velcro name tags barely hanging on. The loud one walked in first, grinning, shoulders wide, voice already carrying too far. Victory tastes like bottom shelf bourbon, gentlemen. He dropped into a stool like the world owed him the space. Gus gave a polite nod. 1 round. The 2nd Marine leaned over the bar. Come on, Gus. 4 rounds. We just got off Halo Cert. Gus didn't lift his voice. 1, then water. They laughed. Not real laughter, the kind that comes with power nobody's told them to put down yet. Kerr didn't look up. The 3rd Marine was watching her, smallest of the group. Thin, angular, fox pretending to be a wolf. He nodded toward her with his chin. Desk seal. The 4th smirked. Diver seal. They don't count. The 2nd added, I heard she got pulled from active last quarter. Inner ear damage. Pressure tolerance. Gus's hand stopped over the glass rack. Just for half a second, the big one, Dunn, his name tag said, leaned his stool back. So she's not just a fake seal. She's a broken one. Kerr turned the page. That annoyed him. He raised his voice slightly. Hey, sweetheart, that soda looks tired. You want a real drink? We got bottles older than your pension. Nothing. He scoffed. Maybe she can't hear us. Probably still got water in the ears. Gus set the towel down. That's enough. Dunn didn't turn to him. Just grabbed his glass, took a long sip, and as he lowered it, knocked the edge just enough to spill the rest across the floor. It splashed low, wide. Some of it caught the toe of Kerr's boot. She looked down once, then back at her book. Dunn was already standing. He took a step forward, slow and swaggering, head tilted with that grin. You gonna clean that, sweetheart? Kerr closed the book. Not hard. Not loud. Just final. She set it aside. Not with haste. Just precision. Her right hand stayed on the spine a moment longer than it needed to, like she was weighing whether the next few seconds were worth standing up for. She didn't stand. Instead, she raised her eyes to Dunn. You made the mess, Corporal. Her voice wasn't sharp. It was surgical, flat, understated, the kind of tone that doesn't cut until later. One of the younger Marines barked a laugh. Dunn gave a mock look of surprise. Didn't know SEALs came with a sarcasm module. Must have been installed after the warranty expired. The others snorted. One leaned toward his buddy, whispering, She even blink yet? Another, slightly behind them, raised his phone. Screen already rolling. Let's see if the SEAL barks worse than the bite, he muttered. Dunn stepped forward again. Too close. Close enough to own the space around her. You got a twitch, Lieutenant Commander? He said, looking down at her. I heard deep water operators can't hold eye contact once you drag them above sea level. Kerr didn't blink, didn't flinch. That only made him angrier. He leaned in, grinned, and with 2 fingers, flicked her forehead, light, mocking, like a schoolyard dare. What's the matter? Lost your pressure gauge? Gus moved around the end of the bar. That's it. You're done. Back off. But before he could reach the booth, Dunn struck. Not a full swing, just a sudden palm knuckle shot, close enough to bruise, sharp enough to shock, straight across Isla's cheekbone. The blow cracked audibly. Her head rocked sideways, shoulder catching the corner of the booth, spine folding slightly as she dropped to one knee beside the table. Gasps shot across the bar. One of the pool players dropped his cue. Gus froze mid-step. Even Dunn looked caught off guard by the silence that followed. Then phones came up. One of the Marines muttered, "You get that?" The screen flicked to red. Recording. The air changed. Kerr rose, slow, no stagger, no hand for balance. Blood had trickled from her bottom lip, catching along the side of her chin. She wiped it with her knuckle. No drama, just accounting. She looked at Gus, then the phone, then Dunn. "You're all done here." The words sounded like a checklist, not a threat. Dunn laughed first. "Yeah, you gonna call the bar police?" Kerr didn't answer. She picked up her jacket, slid one arm in, then the other. She walked past Gus, past the Marines. No limp, no hesitation. Straight out the rear exit. A long beat passed. Then one of the Marines called after her. "Guess that's a SEAL for you, sinks without a fight." They laughed again, but this time it felt thinner, performed. Out in the parking lot, Isla paused beneath the sodium light beside the base access gate. She reached up, brushed her collar straight, and stepped into the small brick security outpost. Inside, a young MP leaned up from his chair, surprised. "Ma'am?" She gave him a name and badge number. Her tone hadn't changed. "I'm reporting an off-base incident involving 3 active Marines. Minor assault, minor damage." He blinked. "Yes, ma'am. Do you want to file?" She looked down at the injury, then back up. "No, I want it documented." She turned and left. Not limping, not looking back, just walking, like she already knew the next step was hers to set. The laughter inside Slater's didn't last long. It echoed too wide in the half-empty room, bouncing off silent stares and barstool shadows that didn't join in. Even the jukebox stayed quiet. Gus never moved from his spot behind the bar. When Dunn tried to order another round, Gus didn't even reach for the bottle. "You're cut off." Dunn raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" Gus stared straight through him. This place doesn't serve cowards. For a second, it looked like Dunn might argue. But something in the bartender's tone made the rest of his crew pull him back by the elbow. By the time they stumbled out, the video was already making rounds. In the Marine barracks, Corporal Vance sat on his footlocker watching the clip loop for the 3rd time on his bunkmate's phone. Around him, 5 other Marines crowded close, some laughing, others just watching with arms folded. "Riker really went for it," someone muttered. "About time someone knocked her off that high horse," another added. But Vance wasn't laughing. He kept watching the moment after the punch, the way she stood, the way her face didn't change, how she just picked up her jacket and walked out like nothing had landed. "You see that?" Vance said, pointing at the screen. "She didn't even flinch." His bunkmate shrugged. "So? She's probably just embarrassed." "No." Vance rewound it, played it again. "That's not embarrassment. That's something else." Across the compound, in the SEAL-ready room, the mood was different. 3 candidates sat near the gear lockers, voices low. Petty Officer Mendez leaned against the wall, arms crossed tight. "How many people you think have seen it?" one asked. "Enough," Mendez said, "and they're all missing the point." "Which is?" Mendez looked up. His jaw was set. "She let him do it. She could have stepped left, right, turned around. She saw him coming, but she let him push her." The youngest candidate frowned. "Why would she do that?" "Because now it's documented. Now it's not his word against hers. It's video evidence of a Marine corporal assaulting a SEAL officer in a public bar." Mendez pushed off the wall. "And if I know Commander Kerr, she's not done. She's just getting started." Another candidate leaned forward. "You served under her before?" "2 rotations. Mogadishu Extract 2019. She took shrapnel to the shoulder, pulling a contractor out of a collapsed safe house. Didn't say a word, just kept moving. Didn't even report it until we were wheels up and the medic noticed blood. He paused. Dunn thinks he embarrassed her. What he actually did was give her a reason to recalibrate the entire standard. Silence settled over the group. Then one of them spoke quietly. What do you think happens next? Mendez didn't answer right away. He just looked toward the window, toward the admin building where command sat on the second floor. Something precise. Then the red and blue lights hit the frosted glass. 2 base security vehicles rolled up silent. No sirens. Just calm authority. One MP stepped inside while the other waited by the door. He wasn't carrying a weapon, didn't need to. He scanned the room once. Corporal Dunn, Corporals Levis and Hart, step outside. Dunn smirked, lifting his hands in mock surrender. Guess someone tattled. Outside, under the glow of the perimeter lamps, the 3 Marines stood shoulder to shoulder. While IDs were checked and statements taken, the MP's tone remained neutral, clipboard efficient. No cuffs, no shouting. Report filed as minor disturbance. Further review pending. Dunn signed the sheet without reading it. She won't press charges. Just wanted to feel powerful for once. He handed the clipboard back and walked toward the lot with the swagger of someone who'd already rewritten the memory to favor himself. Behind them, Gus locked the front door early. The next morning, the base was alive with its usual rhythm. Jet fuel, boots on gravel, the clatter of gear stowing into racks, standard issue. Dunn and his 2 crewmates strolled into the conditioning wing still wearing the night's overconfidence. Their hangovers were shallow, their grins louder than necessary, but something on the rotation board made all 3 stop mid-step. A new line had been added to the morning schedule, 0700. Joint Endurance Circuit Lead Instructor, Lieutenant Semdiar Islaker. Mandatory. Attendance. Mixed units. All physical cert recruits. Dunn's face froze. Levis leaned in. Is that the same? Hart cut him off. Has to be. Dunn scoffed. She's a diver. She's not command qualified. Then the admin officer walked by, adjusting his clipboard. That instructor passed force recon qualification in 22 and has 2 active dive commendations. If she says run, you run. The hallway went quiet. At precisely 0658, the formation was called outside near the circuit yard. Marines and SEAL trainees stood side by side, glancing at one another under morning sun that hadn't yet burned through the Marine layer. Then she walked in. Isla Kerr, full training gear, dive unit insignia sewn crisp into the shoulder. Her eye still bruised faintly beneath one ridge. The scarlet mark hadn't faded, but neither had her posture. She stepped in front of the group. No clipboard, no whistle. Today's drill isn't punishment. A beat. It's correction. No one said a word. The air felt heavier than yesterday's silence, because now they knew she wasn't bluffing. The training bay was colder than expected. Corrugated steel walls trapped the morning damp like a sealed canteen. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering pale reflections off the surface of the shallow flood pool. The scent of chlorine and worn canvas filled the air. 12 recruits stood along the concrete edge. Marines, SEAL trainees, a couple of medics assigned as observers, all waiting for instructions. No one made eye contact. At the far end of the pool, the 12-foot dive tank loomed, a black rectangle of still water used for gear recovery drills and emergency ascent simulations. Ela stood in front of the group, clipboard tucked under one arm. Her expression wasn't stern. It was calibrated. Like she'd walked this exact routine 100 times before and didn't need to raise her voice to prove anything. Today's circuit is rescue simulation. Weighted dummy submerged at base depth. Simulated current resistance. You will partner across unit lines. 1 Marine, 1 SEAL candidate. She paused. Objective, extraction, recovery, full transport to deck in under 3 minutes. Failure to meet standard means repeat. Murmurs swept the group. Most hadn't touched the dive bay since orientation. Kerr pointed without looking at the sheet. Corporal Dunn, you're with Petty Officer 2nd Class Darien. Pool 1, go. Dunn stepped forward, jaw tight. His SEAL partner was lean, serious-eyed, already halfway into a swim vest. Dunn didn't look at him, just pulled the zipper up on his own and stepped to the edge. The horn buzzed. They dove. 50 seconds in, their coordination fell apart. Dunn swam wide, failing to grab the dummy's weighted base. His partner reached too early. They collided in the water. The dummy sank deeper. By the time they wrestled it up, the timer had already passed the cutoff. Kerr watched without blinking. When they dragged the dummy onto the deck, Dunn barked, "He grabbed early. That's not on me." Kerr didn't respond. She looked down at the clipboard. "Redo. 1 minute recovery." Then again. More murmurs. Dunn glared. "Seriously? You failed the standard again." He muttered something under his breath. She ignored it. Other pairs rotated through, some barely making time, others flailing outright. The dummy's weight and awkward design punished arrogance and sloppiness alike. Midway through, Dunn's second attempt fared no better. He surfaced with a curse and let the dummy float. Darian didn't help him this time, just climbed out without a word. Kerr turned to the group. "Stand down." Everyone froze. She didn't shout. She just walked straight into the water, fully clothed. No wetsuit, no prep, boots submerged, pants dragged, nothing rushed. The water reached her waist, then her chest. She ducked beneath the surface. 20 seconds, 40. She surfaced. One arm looped through the dummy's neck. One leg braced against the current created by the low turbines at the tank's edge. She pivoted, drove the weight upward, and in a single controlled surge, pushed the body over the deck lip. She climbed out. Water soaked her sleeves, her collar, her hair, everything but her voice. "Reset." Dunn stood stiff beside the wall. "You showing off?" he asked. She looked at him for the first time all morning. "No, just accurate." She turned back to the clipboard, and the room felt smaller. Not because she'd said much, but because everything she didn't say landed harder than anything he'd thrown. Near the exit, one of the senior instructors, Master Chief Torres, decorated combat diver with 23 years in, stood with his arms crossed. He'd watched the whole thing without moving. When the trainee beside him started to speak, Torres raised one finger. Silence. He waited until most of the recruits had filed out, then walked over to where Kerr was hanging her vest back on the equipment rack. "That was clean," he said quietly. She didn't turn around, just kept organizing the gear. They needed to see the standard. They saw more than that. Torres glanced back toward where Dunn had been standing. "Word's already out about what happened at Slater's. Half the base thinks you let him walk. I did. The other half thinks you're waiting." She turned then, met his eyes. "I'm not waiting. I'm documenting." Torres studied her for a moment, then nodded once. "For what it's worth, I was in Kandahar when you pulled that pilot out of the downed Chinook. You carried him 2 clicks through a hostile terrain with a dislocated shoulder. Didn't drop him once. He had a family. So did you. But you went back anyway." He paused. "These kids don't know who they're dealing with yet, but they will." He walked away without waiting for a response. The locker bay echoed faintly, with the sound of half-closed metal doors and dripping wetsuits. Training had wrapped 20 minutes ago. Most recruits had cleared out. The hum of industrial dryers played like static in the background, accompanied by the soft clang of weight belts being hung on steel racks. Isla stood near the back row, wiping residual pool water off her arms with a government-issue towel. Her sleeves clung to her forearms, soaked through from the earlier demonstration. But she hadn't bothered to change. She didn't need dry clothes to prove she was in control. That's when she heard the footsteps, too slow to be casual, too even to be nervous. She didn't turn. "Commander," Dunn's voice came from behind her, low and coated in tension. She didn't answer. "You embarrassed us out there. Made us look like clowns in front of half the command base." She set the towel down neatly on the bench beside her, then turned to face him. 2 other Marines flanked him, Levis and Hart. Neither said anything, but both stood with that stupid bravado that always burned off the minute someone actually pushed back. Isla met Dunn's eyes. Her voice remained neutral. "No one made you look like clowns, Corporal. You earned it." Dunn's jaw shifted. I think you've got a habit of thinking you're above people just because you made it through Bud S. No, I think you've got a habit of confusing silence for permission. The tension spiked. One of the Marines, Hart, took a step forward, shoulders stiff. You embarrassed the uniform, Dunn hissed. Isla didn't blink. No, you did. That was enough. Dunn's arm twitched. Maybe it was reflex. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was something uglier. He stepped forward and swung. It wasn't a proper punch. Just a horizontal jab meant to land near the side of her jaw and end the conversation the way it started. But this time, she moved. One pivot. Her right foot slid back. Her torso turned. His punch grazed air. Her forearm locked his elbow mid-extension, guiding it forward. Then she spun beneath his arm, redirected his center line, and planted him spine first onto the concrete between two benches. It was quiet. So quiet that even the dryers stopped humming. Levis lunged without thinking, arm out, aiming to shove her back. She rotated, dropped low, and swept his foot with her heel. He hit the side of the bench, ribs first, with a hollow thud. Wind knocked from his lungs. Hart hesitated, but only for a second. She didn't wait. One step, two pivots. And he was upended with a wrist lock and a shoulder compression that pinned him flat before he understood what had happened. 3 down. She stood in the middle of them, sleeves dripping, breathing steady. Then came the footsteps again, this time from the corridor. 2 base security officers stepped into view, hands at their belts. What the hell's going on? Kerr raised one palm slowly, not facing them. They slipped. The officers paused, looked around, assessed the scene. No one was bleeding. Everyone was breathing. They said nothing else. One of the officers keyed his mic. Possible training accident. We'll file light. She turned back toward her bench, picked up the same towel, and resumed wiping her arms, like nothing had happened, like everything had gone exactly how it needed to. Commander Rafe Holland didn't like surprises. The base security office at Camp Hollister ran on 2 things, routine and silence. Anything that broke either was a problem. And when his comms officer forwarded the locker bay report with the subject line, Lieutenant Semder Kerr. Physical altercation. No injuries. Holland leaned back in his chair with a sigh that meant paperwork. He'd met Kerr once, briefly in a dive debrief room 6 months earlier, where she'd submitted a 2-line report with 10 pages of supporting diagrams and not one wasted word. She was the kind of SEAL that didn't trade on volume. She traded on accuracy. So when 3 corporals ended up on the floor during a shift she was leading, he didn't picture rage. He pictured angles. He walked down to the security review room and nodded once at the tech on duty. Locker bay. Yesterday's end of shift. Pull it. The footage loaded with no commentary. Just gray and blue footage. 3 Marines circling 1 SEAL. A hand raised. A lunge. Then movement so clean it barely registered until it was over. Dunn flat on his back. One tried to grab her. Was on the floor 4 seconds later. Another went airborne from a redirected wrist. Holland watched her step back, hands open, still, then speak to the guards as they arrived. He folded his arms. Run it again. They did. Audio? Minimal, sir. I want the full report cross-checked with her original bar incident claim. The tech handed him a printed copy. Filed as minor assault, off base, 2 nights ago. Same names, same parties. He scanned the form. Her handwriting was tight, slanted, deliberate. Incident recorded, not escalated. 3 Marines initiated contact. Contact neutralized without injury. No retaliation enacted. No further action requested. Holland read the last line twice. He didn't smile, but his jaw set a little firmer. He walked back to his office, pulled up the commando roster, and typed a memo. Internal communication, disciplinary hearing notice to Corporal Dunn, Corporal Levis, Corporal Hart from CMDR R. Holland, Base Security CO. Subject, hearing, joint training conduct, and assault review date, Monday 0900. Location J. Conf Room 3. A. Note, effective immediately. You are restricted to quarters unless on official rotation. You are not to contact Lieutenant CMDR Kerr or any SEAL team members prior to the hearing. Your unit COs have been informed. Holland sent the notice, then picked up his coffee, took a slow sip, and walked down the hall. He found Isla seated in the admin wing outside operations, boots crossed at the ankle, quiet as ever. "Lieutenant Commander," she stood. "Sir, I've seen the footage." She gave a single nod. "So has half the barracks by now." Holland glanced at the bruise still faint on her cheekbone. "You want to press formal charges?" "No, sir. Just wanted it documented." "Why?" "Because documentation holds weight, and weight shifts culture." He held her gaze a beat longer, then nodded once. "You'll be called to testify, Monday morning." "I'll be ready." He turned to leave, paused. "You ever teach restraint in those SEAL lectures?" She looked past him toward the window. "Only to people who confuse silence with surrender." Holland didn't reply, he just walked off, already updating the report in his head. This wasn't about a fight. It was about a system watching what it allowed to happen. And this time, it had chosen to watch the right moment. The walls of JAG Conference Room 3A were bare. No flags, no portraits, just a mounted screen, a long steel table, and the kind of silence that felt more like atmosphere than absence. At 0859, the door opened. Corporal Dunn walked in first, uniform crisp but collar tight with sweat. Behind him, Levis and Hart, postures stiff, faces blank. Their unit CO sat 2 chairs down, arms crossed, unreadable. At 0900 on the dot, Commander Holland entered. He didn't carry a file, just a notepad and a pen. "Take your seats." They did. No one spoke. Then the door opened again. Lieutenant Commander Isla Kerr stepped in. Full uniform, dive insignia above her left breast. Rank bar polished, single bruise still faint against her cheekbone. She didn't sit. She stood at ease behind the second row of chairs. Holland turned on the monitor. "Exhibit 1. The screen lit up. Security footage from Slater's lounge. No sound, just raw surveillance video. Dunn's finger flicking her forehead, the punch, her fall, her rise, the walkout. Then the second clip. Training bay footage, Dunn lunging, her pivot. 3 Marines on the floor within 10 seconds. Not a grunt, not a roar, just motion. The final shot, her speaking to the security officers. Hands open, voice unreadable. Holland clicked pause, then looked at Dunn. "You still want to explain this as a misunderstanding, Corporal?" Dunn cleared his throat. "Sir, I regret the incident. I think emotions got high. There was confusion about authority." Holland didn't blink. "She was your instructor." "Yes, sir. But the drill wasn't originally scheduled. The schedule wasn't the issue. Your conduct was." Silence. He turned to Levis and Hart. "You filmed it, shared it, laughed at it." Neither responded. "I reviewed your messages. The group thread was titled "Seal Barbie Gets Wet." Hart flinched. Holland closed the notepad. "Here's the reality. You assaulted a superior officer in a public setting. Then again, in a restricted facility. You weaponized groupthink, recorded misconduct, and disrespected the chain of command, not with force, but with arrogance." He turned to Isla now. "You've submitted no request for disciplinary action." She nodded. "Correction was achieved." The phrase landed heavier than it should have, like a line already proven. Holland looked back at the Marines. "Effective immediately. Article 15 recommendations for all 3. Reduction in rank for Dunn. Restriction to base. Mandatory conduct review for Levis and Hart. Digital evidence archived. Command oversight triggered." Dunn's jaw shifted, but he said nothing. Holland continued. "This board finds your actions dishonorable, your behavior immature, and your excuses irrelevant. What you misunderstood is restraint." He stood. "That's all." Chairs scraped back. No one spoke as Kerr exited first. She didn't glance at them, didn't slow. Levis watched her go. Hart dropped his eyes. Dunn remained still. Holland waited until the room was nearly empty, before picking up his pen again. He didn't write a report. He just circled one phrase from the transcript. Correction was achieved, then underlined it twice. A week later, Slater's lounge looked exactly the same. Same buzzing neon sign, same warped countertop, same jukebox that hadn't worked since Memorial Day. But the air had changed. It always did after something loud went quiet. Lieutenant Commander Isla Kerr sat in the corner booth again. Same seat, same posture, same glass of flat soda in front of her, condensation slowly tracing rings onto a clean napkin. This time, she wasn't reading. She just sat. Gus nodded at her from behind the bar without saying a word. When he brought over a fresh glass, he placed a second napkin underneath it, folded into a precise triangle. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. The bar was only half full, mostly contractors, and a few junior sailors who kept their distance, like they knew the story even if they didn't know the name. The door opened, no fanfare. Corporal Dunn stepped in, slower than last time. No swagger, no laughter. His boots scuffed the floor differently now, one stripe missing from his sleeve. A small bandage on his forearm where the skin hadn't bruised, just remembered. He spotted her in the corner, stopped mid-step. For a moment, he looked like he might turn around and leave, but he didn't. He walked over, not all the way, just close enough that his voice wouldn't carry past the booth. I went too far. Kerr didn't look up. So did the punch. Her tone wasn't sharp. It was flat. Not angry, not gentle, just true. Dunn nodded once, not defensive, not sorry enough to beg, but enough to know what he'd done. He left without ordering anything. As he stepped out into the parking lot, a civilian contractor at the bar leaned toward Gus. "Who's she again?" Gus didn't look up from wiping the glass. "Someone you don't start a fight with." Kerr remained still. Not victorious, not satisfied, just still. Like the ocean before it decides which direction the tide should turn next. Would you have fought back in that bar? Or waited for the right time to make it count? Do you think restraint is weakness or the highest form of strength? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you never miss the next mission. Share this story with someone who still thinks calm means soft. And since you're already here, our next operation's already on your screen. Go watch it now. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.